In the Gospel of John, chapter 5, there is a strange story that mystified scholars for years. The story turns on a lame man who presumably lay beside a five-sided pool for 38 years waiting for an angel to stir the water so that the first one in could be healed. Of course, being crippled, his chances of being first were slim to none, and so it was really a pathetic exercise in futility. Then one day he met Jesus, and Jesus did for the man what the pool could not do. He made him whole again. Now that's the story. The story puzzled scholars because John's description of the pool is so specific that it has the air of authenticity. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porches, at which a multitude of sick, blind, lame, and paralyzed lay. Now that's pretty precise information. It's a little like saying, on the corner next to the post office, there's a McDonald's. Presumably, anyone living in Jerusalem at the time would have known the place of which John was speaking. The problem is, there is no such pentagonal-shaped, 5-sided structure referenced in antiquity. John's credibility was suspect. And yet his description is so specific that he seems to assume that anyone reading his gospel would know exactly the pool to which he was referring. Now we know they would. John said that the pool was by the sheep gate. Locals tell me that up until the last 50 years or so, there was a sheep market in that area, only closed when the tourism industry supplanted it. Tourists don't want to wade through a bunch of sheep to visit the city. The sheep gate, no doubt, granted access to the sheep market. Even more intriguing is that John called the pool by name, Bethesda, Bethesda in English. The existence of a pool called Bethesda in the city of Jerusalem at the time of Jesus has now been confirmed by the Dead Sea Scrolls. In the famous copper scroll from Qumran, written sometime prior to AD 68, a list of places in Jerusalem is cited, and among them this: at Bethesda, in the pool where you enter its smaller reservoir. Note that the scroll describes the pool as having a smaller reservoir, and one presumes a larger one. That is, the Dead Sea Scrolls attest to a pool in Jerusalem, known at the time as Bethesda, that was comprised of 2 pools, not just one, as had been previously supposed. And so the Dead Sea Scrolls verify that such a pool existed, albeit comprised of twin pools rather than a single pool. But still no mention of a 5-sided pentagonal pool of John's account. And then in the 1960s, the Roman Catholic Order of the White Fathers, excavating near the old sheep market in Jerusalem, discovered, wait for it, twin pools surrounded by covered porches. 2 pools, rectangular in shape, a larger one to the south, a smaller one to the north, separated by a dike of stone nearly 20 feet wide, were discovered. The pools were situated in a small valley now filled in, which ran diagonally to the Kidron Valley. No doubt, the pools were situated to act as reservoirs, just as the copper scroll had described, to collect runoff water on its way to the Kidron. The pools were also supplied by a spring which intermittently bubbled up to the surface, no doubt accounting for the legend of the angel who troubled the waters, to which some manuscripts of the Gospel of John refer. And then this: the excavations revealed that the pools were surrounded by 5 colonnaded porches, 4 around the outside of the 2 pools, and 1 on the dike running right through the middle. The pools did indeed have 5 porches, just as John had said. It's just that they weren't shaped like a pentagon. as scholars had incorrectly assumed. For the full story, see chapter 12 of my book, Where Jesus Walked. Finally, this. Next door to the excavations of the pool is a small chapel with a long history of its own. Originally constructed by Roman Christians to commemorate the birthplace of Mary, Jesus' mother, the chapel is known as the Church of St. Anne, because the early Christian source, the Proto-Evangelium of James, composed by Jesus' half-brother, says that this was the place where Anna and Joachim, Mary's parents, Jesus' grandparents, lived. According to the tradition, Joachim, Mary's father, was a shepherd who understandably lived near the sheep market there in Jerusalem. This means that if tradition is correct, the Pool of Bethesda was right next to the house where Jesus' grandparents lived. And while it's just a tradition, I can imagine Jesus on more than one occasion visiting with his grandparents in Jerusalem and watching that pathetic picture of a pool that promised but could not deliver healing for a man who had lain there 38 years hoping for something that would never happen. Intriguingly, John says that Jesus knew he had been lying there for a long time. How could Jesus have known that? Maybe because he had seen him there while he was in Jerusalem visiting his grandparents. And I can just imagine that the young Jesus, taking note of that man, said to himself, one day I'm going to do something about that. And one day, John says, he did. And now you know the rest of the story. Till next time, take care. God bless.